Bonjour à toutes et à tous, bienvenue dans CINECAST. Salut Thibaut.
Salut Guillaume.
CINECAST, vous le savez, c'est l'émission qui vous fait découvrir les sorties cinéma et streaming et de temps en temps, très rarement, mais cette fois-ci, ça de plus en plus fréquent, vous allez voir. On a des interviews, en tout cas, on a la chance de rencontrer l'une ou l'autre personnalité du cinéma et de leur parler de leur dernière sortie. C'était le cas de Rian Johnson que tu as eu l'occasion d'interviewer à Londres, Thibaut, dans le cadre de la sortie de Wake Up Dead Men, le troisième film de la saga Knives Out sur Netflix.
Oui, tout à fait. Bah, écoute, alors c'était des interviews par Zoom alors que j'étais à Londres et que lui aussi était à Londres au moment du BFI, London Film Festival. Donc voilà, je pense que la qualité audio est pas oufissime malheureusement. Les conditions, d'enregistrement étaient, un peu compliquées. Parce que Rian Johnson n'est pas la seule personne que j'ai interviewée ce jour-là. Mais voilà, je suis pas sûr que le reste est pas très, très exploitable. Donc vous n'entendrez pas Glenn Close et Josh Brolin de cette interview malheureusement. Mais voilà, j'ai pris quand même beaucoup de plaisir à interviewer Rian Johnson. C'était la deuxième fois que je l'interviewais, heu, la deuxième fois pour un film, Knives Out, parce que la première fois c'était déjà pour le premier film et ici voilà, je trouve que le film est très réussi, plus réussi que Glass Onion. Donc voilà, ça a été un plaisir de voir le film et d'en discuter avec Rian Johnson qui a quand même plein de choses intéressantes à dire à ce sujet. Donc voilà, je vous souhaite une bonne écoute de cette interview.
Hi, Ryan. Thank you very much for the movie. Congratulations. It has a very different approach. I thought Blanc is only appearing after 45, 50 minutes within the movie. How did you think about that? How did you making appearing the detective so late, kind of in the movie?
Well, in a way, it's this is actually the first one where we're doing a much more traditional approach to kind of the murder mystery structure. If you look at most of Agatha Christie's books, this is how these or these stories usually work. You have a first act where you introduce all the suspects and you have a strong suspicion of who's going to get killed, and then they get killed at the end of the first act, and then the detective shows up and starts solving the case. So with the previous movies, we kind of did time jumps and weird tricks to kind of do it a different way. With this one, I thought it could be nice to go back to tradition, and so yeah, Blanc only enters the story after the murder happens. But then once he's in it, he's really in it.
Where did the idea of using a church as the central element of the murder come from?
For me, there's a couple things. I mean, there is a history of clerical mysteries. I mean, Agatha Christie wrote Murder at the Vicarage. To me, the bigger inspiration, G.K. Chesterton's Father Brown mysteries, which are wonderful mysteries, but also delve with humor and a lot of humanity the into how the mystery story and the mystery of faith and human sin and guilt go together like two gears. They're two things that work together very well. So when I knew I wanted to do also an impossible crime and do this kind of crime that looks like there's no way it could have been performed, the idea of that lining up with the notion of miracles. And I grew up very religious myself. I'm not anymore, but I come from that world, so it was very personal for me too. Anyway, you're right. It's two things that go together very, very well, and I had a lot of fun mining the connection points of them.
And about this incredible cast, how did you put it together?
I have no idea. We must have tricked them. I don't know. It's amazing to me when I look down the list and I see, I mean, the fact that I got to work with Glenn Close, who is, not just a legend, but is also every single day on set, she was the most excited person to be there. She just loves making movies, and she has an energy on set that just the rest of the cast and myself were just inspired by every day. But all of them, I mean, I feel like we've been very, very lucky with these movies, with the cast that we've got. Also, though, because these movies are ensembles and because they're truly ensembles, it means that any actor who's going to sign up for them loves other actors and is excited not about showing up and being number one on the call sheet or about having a big trailer or whatever, or having a big part. They're excited about being part of an ensemble team and about playing off of and feeding off of and hanging around the other actors. And so in that way, we've gotten very lucky, but it's also a little bit of a self-selecting process because anyone who shows up is kind of going to be showing up to play the game with us.
There's the movie's quite darker than the previous ones. I thought it was very much inspired. But again, I thought so very much inspired by horror movies. Could you talk a bit about that and that approach, which you talked about already about the visual approach, the lighting, about the church and everything, which feels more horror film inspired.
Yeah. We have actual jump scares in this movie, which is the first time in this series. But it again, for me, it comes from something that I think is deeply rooted in the genre. I mean, many people would say the actual origin of the mystery story, this form of mystery story, is Edgar Allan Poe, is Murders in the Rue Morgue. And so, and an author who is very influential on this movie, so much so that we name check him many times in the movie, is John Dixon Carr, who he wrote at the same time as Agatha Christie. He was part of the golden age of detective fiction. He lived in London. He was actually an American, but he kind of spent most of his time in London. And he very much wrote in the tone of Gothic horror, and he was great at evoking an atmosphere of dread. And he was wonderful in doing, he did these impossible crimes, and he always veered it as close as he could get to the supernatural, to where you would think 3/4 of the way through the book, okay, there's no way this could have happened except for it to have been a ghost. And then he always pulls it back at the end. So he's somebody that the tone of the movie and kind of the more horror elements of it, I guess, took a very big cue from.
Why did you choose to set the story in the United States rather than in England?
Well, for me, these stories are I don't know. I guess when I made the first movie, when I made Knives Out, part of the thing I was excited about was, as someone who's a very big murder mystery fan, obviously, so many of the murder mysteries that I grew up watching or that were even currently being made were set in the UK or set overseas. But more than that, they weren't even really set in the UK. They were set in these kind of idealized little out-of-time pockets, almost like period pieces, even if they were modern day. And so a big part of the starting point for this whole series for me was, first of all, to make these movies in their way very American. You know, I hope they can be enjoyed by everyone, but I wanted to very much for each film just focus on where my head was at in living in America in 2025, and to make them very modern day. And so for me, even though for a lot of reasons it made sense we did shoot the movie in London and had a great time here, the actual film itself is very much kind of centered around my experience in America right now.
How did you think about Benoit Blanc as a character? How did you make him evolve in those 3 movies? In this one, he's a bit more cocky. He's bragging about his big reveal, which he didn't show that part that much in the previous ones. How did you think about him for this movie?
Well, I think for me, Blanc always, I don't think about Blanc as kind of like a character who we're building a portrait of over the course of all these movies. I think about each one of these movies as its own novel on the shelf, and Blanc needs to serve his function in that specific story. And I hope it's consistent. I mean, I think his sense of self-regard is definitely present in the previous movies. I think in this one it comes out a little bit more because it's a little bit of a plot point that he's looking forward to the big reveal at the end. But kind of like Hercule Poirot, he definitely has a sense of a real sense of himself. I think he's feeling his own. But yeah, for me, it's I always want Blanc to serve the story that he's in, and hopefully through the course of that, like in this one, you get a glimpse of a different side of him, or you get to see him grow in a different way. But but it always has to be in service to the specific story. I never want to just load the audience up with mythology about Blanc's backstory or his history or where he came from. To me, that's outside of what's happening in the story. That's all very boring. I think that you're most interested in the detective when he's really engaging with the mystery that's right in front of him.
Thanks.
Great questions, guys. Thank you very much for that.